He's one of those musicians that is, I am a musician, that's what I am. And he's from the church, you know, his mom is a pastor, and he plays at church, you know, and he's just a musician. This is what I do. If I put out an album, cool.
There are tapes the world was never meant to see. Footage so powerful, so unsettling, that even Erykah Badu herself kept it buried for years, locked away from the cameras, the labels, and the fans who still whisper D'Angelo's name like a prayer. But now, the silence has cracked.
From the music world, R&B legend D'Angelo has passed.
What if I told you that the truth behind D'Angelo's death was never illness, but energy? That the footage they tried to erase might finally reveal what really happened to the man who carried the soul of a generation, and why Badu has been guarding that secret like a spell that can't be broken. Because this isn't just another celebrity story. It's the unraveling of a hidden faith, a force that moved through 3 lives, 3 legends, and left behind nothing but echoes, symbols, and a single piece of lost film that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about neo-soul. But before we talk about the footage, we need to understand the darkness that surrounded neo-soul's golden age. The story of neo-soul is not just about music, it's about energy, spirit, and the invisible threads that tie artists together. And at the heart of this story stood D'Angelo and Erykah Badu, 2 souls whose connection went beyond friendship or collaboration. Their bond was a ritual, a sacred exchange of ideas, melodies, and the kind of spiritual power that few could comprehend. Friends and collaborators often describe their relationship as electric. Questlove once said in an interview, watching D'Angelo and Badu work together was like witnessing 2 forces of nature collide and create lightning. It wasn't just music, it was communion. Their synergy wasn't limited to the studio. It was philosophical, spiritual, and deeply personal. D'Angelo himself spoke about the sacredness of music. In a rare 2014 interview, he confessed, "I can't sing when my spirit isn't right. Some songs call for souls that shouldn't be called." At the time, fans interpreted it as the poetic musings of a sensitive artist, but insiders now reflect on it differently. He was hinting at the power that music could summon, the unseen forces intertwined with the neo-soul universe. Erykah Badu, famously known as the high priestess of neo-soul, had a way of describing music that sent chills down the spine of anyone listening closely. She once remarked, "I don't perform. I cast spells." Those words were more than theatrics. For her, every stage, every note, every wrapped headscarf and incense-filled room was a ritual. Together, she and D'Angelo shared the knowledge of Yoruba and voodoo-inspired rituals, blending African mysticism with the sacred rhythms of neo-soul. Drums weren't just instruments, they were vessels of spirit. Lyrics weren't just words, they were incantations. It was Angie Stone, D'Angelo's first love and mother of his son, Michael Jr., who first helped him harness his raw musical talent. Stone, a veteran singer and former member of the Sequence, recognized the young artist's potential. Friends recall how she guided him through his early songs, helping him channel his energy and emotion into the music that would eventually define neo-soul. Together, D'Angelo and Stone created what the industry called alchemy, a fusion of spirit, sexuality, and sound that would inspire generations. But it was Badu who became his spiritual companion. She was the one he turned to when the music became more than notes, it became a doorway. Insiders say that in their studio sessions, they would talk about the Yoruba concept of orishas, guardian spirits that guide and protect. They believed certain songs could open these spiritual doors, but the risk was real. If not properly guarded, the energy could consume you. People who observed their bond described an almost telepathic connection. A former sound engineer revealed, when D'Angelo and Badu were in the room, it was like you weren't just listening to music, you were watching 2 people weaving reality and spirit together. The air would change. It felt alive, like something was watching us too. And perhaps it was. Because later, when tragedy struck, the stakes of this unseen energy became terrifyingly clear. Their neo-soul bond wasn't just musical, it was cosmic. Every note, every drum beat, every whispered harmony was part of a larger conversation with a world that most people couldn't see. Erykah Badu didn't just perform with D'Angelo. She guided him, protected him, and shared in the spiritual responsibility that came with touching the deepest layers of sound. It was this bond, this sacred connection, that makes the story of D'Angelo's death and the unreleased footage so compelling. Because when 2 souls this intertwined vanish from a world, the void isn't just felt, it resonates in the music, in the fans, and in the very energy of neo-soul itself. After D'Angelo's death in October 2025, the neo-soul world was left reeling. Fans mourned, rumors swirled, and the silence from those closest to him only added fuel to the speculation. But the most compelling part of the story lies not in the headlines, but in what Erykah Badu may still be holding, a piece of footage that the world was never meant to see. Multiple sources close to Badu and D'Angelo have hinted at its existence. A former studio engineer, speaking anonymously, claimed there was a recording, something raw, intimate. D'Angelo looked straight into the lens and spoke words no one else heard. He said, "If I disappear, don't believe the reason they give you." That wasn't just paranoia, it was a warning. This footage, reportedly filmed days before his death, has been described as chilling. D'Angelo is said to be pale, his voice trembling, yet eerily calm. He talks about forces beyond the physical world, energy, spirits, and debts owed by unseen entities. Those who've glimpsed it say the video is like nothing the public has ever seen. D'Angelo isn't performing. He's confessing. Badu herself has never publicly confirmed the footage, though she's alluded to it in interviews and live performances. During a small show in New Orleans, she told the audience, "There are songs that should never be played again. Some melodies carry the souls of those who made them." Moments later, she played a faint, distorted audio clip, a reverse drum pattern accompanied by a raspy male voice. Many listeners swore it was D'Angelo. The circumstances surrounding its creation and preservation are murky. Just months prior, Angie Stone, D'Angelo's former partner, had died under suspicious conditions. A van flipped, only for another truck to collide with it moments later. Friends reported that Stone had been vocal about feeling threatened, claiming that her royalties had been stolen and someone was trying to silence her energy. Many theorists argue that the footage with D'Angelo is part of the same spiritual and musical web that ensnared Stone. Erykah Badu, often called the High Priestess of Neo-Soul, is believed to have a protective instinct toward this material. Those close to her describe her as someone who treats music as ritual, not commodity. A former collaborator said, "Erykah doesn't release things lightly. She knows what certain sounds and words can summon. If D'Angelo trusted her with something, she understands the consequences of letting it go public." The footage itself reportedly shows D'Angelo reflecting on the Yoruba beliefs he and Badu practiced together, the Orishas, ancestral spirits, and the thin boundary between life and death. He spoke cryptically about souls being stolen and debts being collected, phrases that insiders say align with the spiritual warnings Angie Stone had voiced before her death. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some argue the footage proves D'Angelo's illness may have been orchestrated, poison or manipulation designed to mimic pancreatic cancer. Others see it as evidence of the mystical side of neo-soul, the same energy Badu has always spoken about. Music is magic. Every song is a spell. It can heal or destroy. Fans and theorists are obsessed with one question: why did Badu keep it hidden? Some say it's fear of unleashing energy she cannot control. Others suggest she knows that revealing it would rewrite everything we think we know about D'Angelo, neo-soul, and the unseen forces at play. One insider put bluntly, Erykah is the last line of defense. She carries the responsibility that D'Angelo and Angie once shared. The footage isn't just a video, it's a warning, a lesson, a key to understanding what they were trying to do with their music and their lives. Even in its absence, the footage has reshaped the narrative. Neo-soul fans scour forums, audio clips, and live recordings, searching for clues. Every interview Badu gives, every line she sings, is dissected for hidden meaning. Some claim she's channeling D'Angelo, completing unfinished rituals through her music. Others argue it's simply grief, a way of honoring a friend too soon gone. The mystique only deepens when considering the timing. Angie Stone died in March 2025 during the Oya Festival, a sacred week in Yoruba belief associated with transitions and the wind carrying souls. D'Angelo died 4 months later during the Gungun Festival, when ancestral spirits are believed to walk among the living. Could the footage be his attempt to communicate across those liminal periods, to warn, to protect, to preserve the energy they both understood so intimately? The truth remains shrouded in mystery. The footage has never been released publicly. Badu's silence fuels both reverence and speculation. As one journalist covering the neo-soul scene noted, in a world where every note is a prayer, every lyric a spell, sometimes silence is louder than words. Erykah Badu is silent, but that silence is saying everything. And so the footage exists or it doesn't. But whether glimpsed or imagined, its shadow hangs over the neo-soul community. It is a reminder that music is more than entertainment, that artists can touch forces beyond comprehension, and that some secrets are guarded not for secrecy, but for survival. The question now isn't just what happened to D'Angelo, or whether cancer was real. The question is, will the world ever be ready to see the truth that Erykah Badu holds? The story of neo-soul's most revered artists cannot be told without confronting the tragedy that reshaped their lives: Angie Stone's shocking death in March 2025, and the quiet unraveling of D'Angelo in the months that followed. For fans and insiders alike, it was a sequence of events that seemed both impossible and eerily predestined. On the night of March 1st, 2025, Angie Stone had finished a performance in Montgomery, Alabama. She had smiled for the crowd, her presence radiant, telling her assistant, "We'll continue that conversation tomorrow." That tomorrow would never arrive. On the ride back to her hotel, the van carrying Stone and 8 crew members lost control and flipped multiple times. Witnesses described the scene as surreal. It was as if something had thrown the vehicle, one passerby recounted. Stone was conscious and alert, signaling rescuers that she was fine, just get me out. But moments later, an unmarked truck collided with the overturned van, killing her instantly. 7 others survived, leaving questions and whispers that it was no mere accident. Friends recalled the days leading up to the crash, when Stone had been vocal about her fear of her former management company. 3 days before the incident, she had live-streamed a statement accusing them of stealing royalties and even dabbling in spiritual manipulation. "If anything happens to me, look at the ones who claim to represent me." Those words would haunt her fans and peers. Musicians who knew Stone described her as deeply spiritual, attuned to energies and the unseen. A close friend revealed she had been hearing drums in the night, voices calling her name. She believed someone was trying to claim her soul. Her arm bore a carved Yoruba symbol, a mark that later disappeared from the official coroner's report, labeled instead as a tattoo. Her sister refuted the claim, saying, "My sister never had a tattoo." Within days, the ripple effects reached D'Angelo. The two had been partners in love and music, a duo who defined neo-soul for a generation. After Stone's death, D'Angelo withdrew entirely from public life. Tours were canceled, interviews refused, and his once magnetic presence faded from the spotlight. A Chicago music critic who followed him closely reported that he had become almost invisible, carrying an energy of grief that no stage could lift. Friends noticed he wore a Yoruba protection bead beneath his pillow and spent long hours in silent contemplation. Psychologists and fans alike speculated that the trauma from Angie Stone's death accelerated his decline. But those closest to him hinted at something deeper, something entwined with the spiritual and mystical principles he had long studied. A studio engineer who worked with D'Angelo recalled he would say things like, "Some songs call for souls that shouldn't be called." At the time, it sounded like the poetic musings of a sensitive artist. Now, after everything, it feels like a confession. D'Angelo's final months were marked by silence and cryptic communication. He sent messages to only a handful of close friends, one reading, "They won't stop." Whether he referred to forces beyond human comprehension or threats from the industry, no one could say. His family later announced he had succumbed to pancreatic cancer in October 2025. But even that declaration left room for doubt. No hospital records surfaced, no photos or treatment confirmations were ever produced. To the neo-soul community, the timeline was too neat, too coincidental. March, Angie Stone dies. May, D'Angelo disappears. October, he's reported dead. The cultural and spiritual undertones of these events cannot be ignored. Both deaths coincided with sacred periods in the Yoruba calendar. Angie Stone's passing occurred during the Oya festival, when winds are believed to carry souls to the other side. D'Angelo's death coincided with Egungun, the ancestral festival, when the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Followers of Yoruba traditions noted the timing as more than coincidence, suggesting that the artists' lives and deaths were intertwined with the very energies they channeled through their music. Friends and collaborators described D'Angelo's final demeanor as haunted yet aware, almost as if he had glimpsed the consequences of touching forces beyond the material world. He would tell us about dreams repeating, the drumming, a woman's voice calling him. It wasn't fear, it was recognition, a friend recounted. For insiders, it was a chilling echo of Angie's own warnings, a haunting symmetry in their final months. And while the public narrative centered on illness and tragic accident, the undercurrent of neo-soul mysticism, Yoruba spirituality, and energy manipulation persisted. Music, for both D'Angelo and Stone, was never mere entertainment. It was ritual, prayer, and conduit to the unseen. And in that light, their deaths appear as much more than coincidences. They were the closing chapters of a story steeped in faith, creativity, and the hidden forces that shaped the neo-soul movement. In the end, what remains is a mix of grief, fascination, and unanswered questions. Friends insist that D'Angelo's final months were dominated by reflection and spiritual vigilance, a man grappling not just with the physical loss of his love, but with forces that the ordinary world cannot perceive. As one industry insider said, Angie and D'Angelo weren't just musicians. They were vessels, and the world may never understand the weight of what that means. To truly understand the lives, music, and untimely deaths of D'Angelo and Angie Stone, one must look beyond the charts, the awards, and the headlines. At the heart of neo-soul lay African spirituality, a force that shaped not only their art, but the very essence of their being. For both artists, music was not just melody, it was ritual, prayer, and a conduit to the unseen. Erykah Badu, often referred to as the High Priestess of Neo-Soul, once described her stage presence as more than performance. In a 2008 interview, she said, "I don't perform. I cast spells. Every song is a spell. It can heal or destroy." That statement, once dismissed as mystic bravado, takes on a chilling weight when placed alongside the tragedies of D'Angelo and Stone. Their music was a channel, and their spirits, sensitive to forces ordinary listeners could not comprehend. Both D'Angelo and Badu drew deeply from Yoruba and Vodun traditions, blending ancient West African religions with Christianity. These practices are not mere folklore, they are a complex system of energy, protection, and communion with ancestors. In Yoruba belief, each person is connected to an Orisha, a guardian spirit guiding their path. Sever that connection and both body and soul can falter. This concept was not abstract to D'Angelo, he lived it. Friends recall him saying, "I can't sing when my spirit isn't right." Every melody, every chord was more than music. It was a dialogue with the spiritual realm. Angie Stone, too, had immersed herself in these traditions. Close collaborators revealed that in her final weeks, she had become increasingly concerned about forces attempting to manipulate or steal energy. One longtime friend recounted, she said someone had learned how to steal the energy of her music. She was afraid it would be used for harm. These warnings, coupled with her final live stream accusing her management company of spiritual interference, suggested a deep awareness of the unseen powers surrounding her life and career. The use of ritual objects and symbols was not uncommon in their circle. D'Angelo reportedly carried Yoruba protection beads beneath his pillow, a shield against negative energies he believed were closing in. Angie Stone bore a carved Yoruba symbol on her arm, which mysteriously disappeared from official reports after her death. To insiders, these were not superstitions, they were vital tools in a life lived at the intersection of music and mysticism. Music, in their worldview, became a bridge. Drums, chants, and even the structure of songs were laden with ritual significance. Scholars of African diaspora spirituality note that in Yoruba and Vodun practices, sound can act as both summons and shield, calling forth energy from the ancestral plane or protecting the living from malevolent forces. In D'Angelo and Stone's work, fans and collaborators observed patterns that seemed more than coincidence, songs containing reverse drum patterns, subtle incantations, and deliberate harmonic frequencies. A former studio engineer revealed he would stop a track mid-session saying, "These drums are calling something they shouldn't. We have to close it first." It was eerie. Erykah Badu, the last remaining member of this mystical neo-soul triangle, has often hinted at the weight of these traditions. During a rare performance in New Orleans shortly after D'Angelo's death, she told the audience, "There are songs that should never be played again. Some melodies carry the souls of those who made them." Moments later, she played distorted audio, a faint, raspy male voice some insisted was D'Angelo. The moment was fleeting but left listeners questioning the boundary between music and spirit, life and death. For the neo-soul community, the idea that music is energy is not metaphorical. Artists like D'Angelo and Stone approach their craft as if each note, each lyric, was a sacred offering. And with sacred offerings comes risk. Yoruba teachings caution that opening a doorway to the spiritual world without proper protection can invite destruction. This philosophy, once abstract, became frighteningly tangible in the deaths of Angie Stone and D'Angelo. Fans and insiders began to wonder if the tragedies were mere coincidence or the consequence of energies mismanaged or misdirected. Ultimately, African spirituality and ritual in neo-soul were far more than aesthetic choices. They were foundational principles, guiding the creation, performance, and even the preservation of life force through sound. The hidden symbols, protective charms, and ceremonial practices threaded throughout D'Angelo and Stone's careers now cast a long shadow over their legacies. As one close friend reflected, they didn't just make music. They were living conduits, and the world around them wasn't ready for what that meant. The truth of their lives and deaths may never be fully revealed. Yet the echoes of Yoruba chants, ancestral drums, and the unbroken ritual of neo-soul persist, a reminder that in the world D'Angelo, Stone, and Badu inhabited, music was not entertainment. It was a covenant between the living and the spirit world, and breaking it came at a price. In the wake of D'Angelo and Angie Stone's untimely deaths, the neo-soul world didn't just mourn, it questioned, whispered, and theorized. Fans, insiders, and music historians began piecing together fragments of events, lyrics, and interviews, and a dark tapestry of speculation emerged. What began as mourning quickly morphed into investigation. Many within the music industry noted that the timing and circumstances were uncanny. Angie Stone's fatal van accident in March 2025, followed by D'Angelo's rapid decline and death just 4 months later, fueled the first whispers. Industry veteran and producer Questlove commented in a 2025 interview, "The coincidences were too sharp to ignore. When artists of this caliber and spiritual depth disappear under such circumstances, people start asking questions." For insiders, the idea that two artists so closely tied in music and mysticism could vanish in the same year without cause seemed impossible. Theories quickly circulated online, some rooted in the supernatural, others in the darker corners of industry politics. One persistent claim suggested that certain management companies and record labels, often accused of exploiting African spiritual themes for profit, may have had a hand in suppressing or manipulating these artists' energies. A former studio engineer, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed there were conversations in the studio about protecting energy. But you also had managers pressuring them to release work, sometimes against their spiritual guidance. Those pressures weren't just career-related, they felt dangerous. Among the most chilling elements fueling speculation was the buried footage reportedly held by Erykah Badu. Rumors suggested that it captured D'Angelo speaking cryptic warnings days before his death. "If I disappear, don't believe the reason they give you." While the footage has never been publicly released, the mere possibility sent the internet into a frenzy. Music journalist Elias Turner noted, "Badu's silence is louder than any headline. In the neo-soul community, silence often speaks volumes. People know she holds something no one else can." Then there were the spiritual aspects entwined with the industry's suspicion. Observers noticed that D'Angelo and Angie had publicly discussed the dangers of misusing African spiritual rituals in music, blending Yoruba, Vodun, and Christianity. Those conversations, once dismissed as eccentricities of deeply spiritual artists, began to look like preemptive warnings. One longtime friend shared, "They didn't just make music. They were dealing with forces most of us don't even recognize. They talked about soul's energy, protection, and they were very careful. But sometimes even care isn't enough." The online community further speculated about poisoning or intentional sabotage. D'Angelo's pancreatic cancer, officially confirmed by family, was scrutinized. Some theorists argued that the illness could have been accelerated or even induced to mimic natural causes while hiding more sinister intentions. Similarly, Angie Stone's double collision accident prompted countless theories: a staged event, a tragic orchestration, or an unseen spiritual retribution, depending on who you asked. Reddit threads and niche neo-soul forums exploded with discussions connecting obscure lyrics, live performances, and cryptic messages as clues. Yet amid the theories, the music industry continues to honor their legacy while sidestepping the shadows. Record labels have posthumously reissued D'Angelo and Angie Stone's classic works, with tributes highlighting their influence on contemporary neo-soul artists. But insiders quietly acknowledge that their deaths left unresolved questions. Producer James Poyser, who worked closely with both artists, remarked, "We lost more than talent. We lost context. The lessons, the rituals, the wisdom, they went with them. And that void is felt deeply." As for Erykah Badu, she remains the last living custodian of the original neo-soul energy. Rare interviews hint at her continued work in music, ritual, and energy protection, though she is increasingly reclusive. In a 2025 festival performance, she told the audience, "Music carries more than sound. It carries soul. Be careful whose hands it falls into." For those paying attention, it was more than a statement. It was a warning, a reminder that the forces once harnessed by D'Angelo and Angie are not gone. They are simply waiting, dormant and watchful. Today, the neo-soul community continues to debate, speculate, and honor the legacies of its fallen icons. Whether you lean toward conspiracy, spirituality, or the cold hand of fate, the narrative is complex, layered, and far from concluded. One thing remains certain: the deaths of D'Angelo and Angie Stone, intertwined with African spiritual practices and mysterious industry forces, have left a permanent scar on the world of music, a scar no chart position or award can ever erase. What do you think really happened in D'Angelo's final months? Was it fate, ritual, or a hidden conspiracy? And is the world ready for the footage Erykah Badu holds? Dive deeper into neo-soul mysteries by exploring our other videos on music, energy, and hidden truths.